Hey, what is going on YouTube? Welcome back to Team VRY, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Google Pixel 6 and the Pixel 4a 5G. It's pretty obvious that the launch of this year's Pixel devices have shown us that Google is willing to take on the competition by offering lower prices for its new smartphones. This is something that we also saw when they gave us the Pixel 3a and the other succeeding A series phones, which offer the Pixel experience at affordable prices, software updates, cameras, and pretty much the whole package. So for this one, let's see how last year's Pixel 4a 5G stacks up against the Pixel 6. Both were launched at considerably lower prices compared to Google's flagship devices. Maybe you're thinking on which one to get, or maybe you prefer the 4a 5G over the Pixel 5a. Whatever the case, I thought that it'll be interesting to see the big difference between these two devices. Before we get started though, we have a lot more Pixel videos here on the channel, so I'm gonna drop some links below if you want to check them out. With that said, let's get started. Alright, so let's start with price. The Pixel 6 comes in price at just $599 for the base model. This is cheaper than last year's Pixel 5, which came in price at $699 and offered mid-range specs that really had everyone scratching their heads. Now this is considerably cheaper than the $899 price tag on the more expensive Pixel 6 Pro. In this case though, I'd like to think that the cheaper price doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing, unlike what other people think. For $599 you get a great design, solid specs and performance, which we'll talk about in a bit. On the other hand, the Pixel 4a 5G launched at around $499, which was $150 more expensive than the smaller Pixel 4a, but obviously more affordable than the Pixel 5. If you're lucky, you can get this at a much lower price these days, although it's been discontinued in some areas to make way for the Pixel 5a. If you're in a tight budget, the Pixel 4a 5G is a more practical choice based on price alone. But are these specs and performance worth it? Let's continue on. Alright, so for the lower price you pay, the Pixel 4a 5G comes in a full polycarbonate design with a matte coating all over. To be honest, I don't really mind this design. I'm actually a fan of matte plastic smartphones, and while it's not a fancy looking device, it's a design that feels good, fits well, and just works in terms of function and ergonomics. It's also got a rear mounted fingerprint sensor, which frankly I think works better than the in-display scanner on the Pixel 6. It also comes with a headphone jack, which is a rare sight these days. However, there's no water resistance, no wireless charging, and unlike the Pixel 5a, there's no metal in the phone's unibody design. At its price though, there's bound to be compromises. On the front is a 6.2-inch OLED display protected by Gorilla Glass 3, although there are no high refresh rates on this one. By comparison, the Pixel 6 comes in with a completely new design and a more premium feel. Gone is the all-plastic build, and now we get a Gorilla Glass Victus panel on the front and Gorilla Glass 6 back panel. These are separated by a matte black aluminum frame. The 6.4-inch OLED display is obviously larger than on the 4a 5G and houses the fingerprint scanner. You can set the display to run at a 90Hz refresh rate, which looks pretty impressive in actual use. The camera module has also seen a radical design change. The tiny camera island on the back is now a window that contains the camera lenses and sticks out quite a bit from the back panel. This new design means that there's no more physical fingerprint scanner, gone along with the headphone jack. We do get wireless charging and an IP68 rating this time around though, which are added conveniences if you ask me. Both phones also feature dual speaker setups with one speaker located along the earpiece and another one placed at the bottom alongside the charging port. They're both loud and have a decent bass-driven sound, but I'll let you be the judge with these audio samples.
This is KJOS, and I have been using the Google Pixel 6 Pro for the last 4 days, and I must say it's been a different experience so far. Now in this video, I'm just going to be giving my first impressions of what I've noticed, but full disclosure, even though Google did send me this phone because I am part of Team Pixel, I'm going to tell it as it is. I'm going to give my honest thoughts on what I think about the phone.
Alright, so let's move on to performance. The Pixel 4a 5G comes with 6 gigs of RAM and a Snapdragon 765G chipset. I use this phone as my daily driver for a long time, and I gotta say that it's an overall good experience. Apps load reasonably fast, and in a nutshell, it just works. You can also do a bit of gaming on the 4a 5G, but it has trouble running heavier games, which would otherwise run effortlessly on the Pixel 6. That's because the newer Pixel has 8 gigs of RAM, and it's got the newest Google Tensor chip, which is the same SoC found on the more expensive Pixel 6 Pro. Now it's obvious that apps open more quickly, load times are shorter, websites render faster, and it's an all-around great experience so far. Like I said earlier, games run smoothly on the new Tensor chip on the Pixel 6. However, it's prone to heating, and I noticed that it tends to get warm with graphics-intensive games. In terms of battery, there's a 3800 mAh unit on the Pixel 4a 5G and a 4600 mAh battery on the Pixel 6. Now, battery performance is a highly subjective matter, and everyone's gonna have a different usage scenario. Just to give you an idea though, the Pixel 4a 5G usually lasted me around 7 7 to 8 hours of screen on time with moderate use, while the Pixel 6 so far floats around the 5 to 7 hour range. Now, considering that the 4A5G has lower power requirements due to older specs, it's not surprising that the battery on the Pixel 6 still has some catching up to do. However, at this point in time, I'm still waiting to see how the Pixel 6 battery's adaptive learning kicks in. Let's move on to what is essentially the highlight of these two phones. The Pixel 4a 5G uses a 12 megapixel primary camera, partnered with a 16 megapixel ultra-wide lens and an 8 megapixel front camera. It doesn't sound like much when compared to camera setups on high-end phones, but thanks to Google's camera software optimization, you can get terrific shots with the Pixel 4a 5G. We actually have some videos highlighting the camera here on the channel, so feel free to check them out. Video quality can be a bit lacking and is one of the weak points of this camera. It's not terrible per se, but it's pretty obvious that at this price there's going to be some limitations. Meanwhile, the Pixel 6 has a newer 50 megapixel primary sensor with a 12 megapixel ultra-wide lens and an 8 megapixel camera on the front. New camera modes like the long exposure and action pan features add new ways to get creative with the camera, and so far Google has decided to keep these features exclusive to the Pixel 6. There have been some improvements to video, but overall I think there's still a bit of catching up to do when comparing the Pixel 6 video quality to the competition. Alright, so it's kind of clear that the Pixel 6 is the better choice for people looking for a top-of-the-line Pixel smartphone without spending an insane amount of money. The performance, specs, camera and build quality are definite upgrades to last year's Google smartphones. However, some people will still be on the hunt for bargains, and if specs aren't a deal breaker, the Pixel 4a 5G is worth looking at. You get great camera performance, software updates, 5G connectivity, and all the basics you'd expect from a competent smartphone. Whichever device you go with though, I've used both of them and I'm pretty happy with the performance I got. They're both great phones and it's up to your priorities and wallet to make the final decision. Alright, so we have a lot more Pixel videos on the channel. Hopefully this one was helpful to you. And yeah, feel free to watch our other stuff here on Team VRY. Thanks for dropping by and I'll see you in the next one.